All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of the Good Life Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Blakely, and today I am pleased to be joined by Mike Gilbreath, our Premier Eye Care here in Kearney. So, Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's get into it a little bit to get to know you a little bit better. What are some books that you are currently listening to or reading?
Right now I'm reading one of Dave Ramsey's books.
Okay.
I think it's Retired Inspired is the name of it.
Okay.
I've read pretty much all of his books, so
Yeah.
kind of follow Dave Ramsey. So
Yep.
if you know anything about that.
Yeah.
So podcasts, kind of boring. I listen to a couple eye podcasts.
Yeah.
And then a couple comedy podcasts, I guess.
What are the eye podcasts like? Are they eye doctors or are they?
Yeah, so the two I listen to, well, one's an eye doctor. He's the son of an eye doctor. He runs like the optical side of their practice. So he's really into sales and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Improving your optical. The other one I listened to was an eye doctor. Now he's a consultant. So he's a practice consultant. He's more of how to run your practice more profitably and more efficiently. So.
Okay. So maybe not necessarily about the medical side, but more.
Yeah, it's not necessarily. Side. Yeah, it's more business related than actual eye related, but it's put on by eye doctors for eye doctors.
Yeah, you got to do both. So
yep,
might as well know that. Cool, very good. Well, let's get into it a little bit. I've known you for 7-8 years now.
Probably 10.
Yeah, or even longer. And so I know about your story, but I think you've got a really unique and interesting story, and so I'm excited to be able to let other people know about it. So just kind of give us, go as far back as you want to, but tell us about the journey of Premier Eye Care, how you got started, wanted to be an eye doctor, and just kind of leads up to today.
Sure. Well, growing up, there's kind of two things that led me to be an eye doctor. One is my sister. She's got kind of an eye condition, so she was told pretty early that she'd never be able to drive. And just quick Google searches, I saw just different opportunities for people with eye issues that were able to drive. And I'm not sure why her eye doctors told her that she would never be able to drive, but that was kind of my main driving force was getting her that ability to become more independent. The state of Nebraska is great with people with eye conditions. Like there's different opportunities to drive just during the day, just at night, with different telescope type deals. So that was probably the main thing that got me thinking that way.
Okay.
The other thing was when I was a junior in high school, I got a pretty bad eye infection.
Okay.
So bad that I missed 2 weeks of school. Like I couldn't open my eye. Like it was terrible. All I did all day was just lay with my head like in the couch or in my pillow and just try to sleep. It was so painful, so light sensitive. And we had to go to the eye doctor every day. Like it was probably, well, I saw my hometown eye doctor years later when I'm an eye doctor, and we kind of run into each other, and he didn't really remember me, but then I was like, well, I had that really bad eye infection, and I could just see it on his face. He was like, oh man, that was so absolutely terrible. He probably, if I had somebody come into my office like that, I'd probably lose sleep over it for a couple of days, just constantly wondering, are we doing the right thing? Should I send him somewhere else? But I've seen pictures of my scar, and it's horrendous from that. And if somebody came in with that, I think I'd just lose it.
Is it rare? Like the infection that you had?
I don't even know what it was. I don't think he ever knew what bacteria it was. Like I don't think then, especially in where I grew up, I don't think they had. In that time, I don't think they had as much things to do. I don't think they cultured them as much and that sort of thing. They didn't have as many antibiotics at that time. We have a lot more now, but I got it in the river. I didn't even wear contacts at the time. I think I got a piece of sand in there, and the sand kind of scratched me, and then whatever was in the river got into my eye. And so, I mean, it could have been about anything.
Who knows what it could be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So, what was the condition, if you don't mind sharing, what was the condition that your sister had?
She's got optic atrophy, which is it's just a genetic defect. It's a pretty rare deal, but uh, it really decreases your vision, your clarity of vision.
Okay.
So, not to get too far into it, but
right. Okay. So those two things happen when you're in high school, and that's kind of what set the stage for you to become an eye doctor, to go to school for that.
Pretty much. I mean, I was interested by it, but when I started college, I still tried to do something else. I was trying to be an accountant,
okay,
and that just I'm a numbers guy, but it just in high school accounting was like my favorite class.
Okay.
In college, I don't know if it was just the classes or if it was just me having to learn the stuff more on my own, but it wasn't what I thought I should be doing.
Got it. So you go to school, and did you settle here in Kearney right away? Did you work for another eye doctor before you started your own business?
Yeah, so so our last year of schooling, we go to 4 different rotations is what they call them. So they're 3-month stints at 4 different places. Two of mine, my last 2 were in Omaha.
Okay.
Kind of worked it out. So my wife had moved from Indiana, where I was going to school, to Omaha right as that last year was starting up.
Okay.
And so I had 3 months in Bloomington, Indiana, and then 3 months in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Then my last 2 were in Omaha, because that's where we thought we would end up.
Sure.
And so we had bought a house there. She had lived there that 6 months before I got there.
Okay.
And then I did those last 2 rotations, and then I started working in Omaha. And so I worked at a Target Optical for about 6 months.
Okay.
And that one, I was a leaseholder, so basically all I got paid was for the exam fees.
Okay.
So if I showed up and I saw 30 people, it was a great day.
Right.
Which never happened.
Right.
Or if I showed up and I had 1 or 2 patients, I might have not hardly made anything.
Which was more typical, probably.
Yeah. And so, bad part about that one was the doctor they had before just kind of abandoned the practice a few times. Like, she would show up and it'd be super busy, and she just didn't want to work that hard, and so she would just walk out.
Oh.
And so I didn't know, and they didn't tell me that optical didn't really have a great reputation. So I walked in, signed this lease, thought they showed me numbers from other places in Omaha, and I thought it was going to be a great deal, and it wasn't.
No.
So yeah, I worked there for about 6 months, and then I got approached by another company that offered me a good salary. But yeah, they worked me to the bone.
Yeah.
So I worked there for 18 months, and that was the exact opposite. Instead of having 1 or 2 patients, I had about 45 a day.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that was too much. So
yeah. So you're trying to find a nice balance in between.
Yeah. So that last place I worked where we were really busy, it was more just giving people the prescriptions and getting them out of there. It wasn't so much caring for their eyes or anything like that. It was just
the numbers.
selling glasses. Yeah. Just how many patients can you run through a day and that sort of thing.
Got it. So how'd you end up in Kearney?
I went to undergrad here. My grandma lived here for a long time. My mom's from Axtell, so not too far away. Yeah, Kearney's always been kind of home, even though I've only lived here these last 10 years.
Sure.
And before that, I've only lived in Kearney about 4 or 5 years, but it's always this area's always felt like home.
Sure. Very cool. So, what's your favorite part of being a small business owner?
The flexibility, I would say.
Yeah.
So the main reason I left the last place in Omaha, 1 was they were just working me to the bone, but 2, I could see when you have kids that probably wouldn't be the best place to work.
Sure.
So there I was working 5 days a week. I had Sunday and Wednesday off.
Okay.
And so, and I'd leave for work at 8 o'clock and I wouldn't get home till 7. And so we had just had my oldest, my boy, and I could just see that when he got into sports, when he got into activities, that there was just gonna be no way that I was gonna be there.
Yeah.
Cause I got 2 weeks off a year, but I had to take them in week stretches.
Oh, wow.
And so, cause they wouldn't shut down, they'd fly a doctor in that had a license for that area, and he would work that entire week. And so,
Wow.
so yeah, I got 2 weeks off, but it was.
You couldn't take a day here and a day there.
Yeah, it wasn't, my son had an activity, I had to take time off, I'm just stuck.
Yeah.
And so I could see that it wasn't gonna be what I wanted. So.
Yeah. Very cool. So, what was the decision like to open up your own? I mean, what went into that thought process? Was it basically just, hey, I want to have more time to be with family, or I want to, be more focused on patient care? Was it a little bit of all of that? As you were working in Omaha, had you kind of thought, well, maybe I'd like to open up my own practice, and kind of started to think about that more?
I think, so I think all along I wanted to start my own practice, or have my own practice. Before we opened up, I actually looked at a couple of practices that were for sale, not in Kearney, but one in Gothenburg and then one in Lincoln, and both of them were they just weren't what I wanted.
Sure.
And so I was going to end up, same amount of money that was going to cost me to start up was going to be the same amount of money that I would purchase those 2 practices for.
Okay.
And they were just not in the shape I wanted. They didn't have the equipment I wanted. It just didn't seem like, I was basically going to start from scratch in those 2 places. And Gothenburg is a nice town. We probably would have enjoyed living there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Lincoln, I don't know if we would have enjoyed that quite as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember what your question was.
No, that's good.
I can't remember.
Talk a little bit about the dynamics of, because really you're the one who's seeing patients.
Mm-hmm.
You're, as far as the doctor that's here right now since you started.
Yep.
But kind of talk about the dynamic of, and your practice has grown to where, we were talking before I hit record, and it's days are busy.
Yep.
Every day.
Yep.
But just talk about the dynamic of, you said you're a numbers guy, you like the accounting side of it, but you've also got to be, the doctor who sees patients.
Sure.
Just talk about kind of that balancing act of running the business, but also, working your trade and being the eye doctor. How difficult is that?
It's time consuming.
Yeah.
I guess, especially at the beginning when you're not really sure what you're doing.
Yeah.
They teach a lot of things in school to be an eye doctor, but they don't really teach you anything to run a practice.
Yeah.
I think we had maybe one class over practice management.
Really?
So just a 3-hour class. And I would say what we learned in that wasn't very practical.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like enough.
But yeah, it especially at the beginning, there was a lot of evenings trying to figure stuff out.
Yep.
Do accounting, make sure that everything's in line with where it needs to be. Especially at the beginning, any small business, I'm sure. Well, unless you're fortunate, the cash flow isn't as good as what maybe the banks tell you, or maybe you work out in your head, and so there's a lot of trying to figure out how to line up the bills with what the money's coming in, so that everybody's happy, and it's just an interesting.
Yeah.
I never talk anybody out of being a small business owner, but there's a lot of long nights, a lot of restless nights where it's just a little tougher than what it seems like it should be.
Yeah.
So.
Have you enjoyed the journey though?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has its days.
Yeah. I enjoy it now.
Yeah.
In the process, in the process, it's interesting. I'm sure you went through the same
Oh, yeah.
stuff, but there were plenty of days where if somebody would have came in and said, "Hey, I'll pay you this much," that equals what I owe, I would have been probably out the door.
Yeah.
But would I change anything? Probably not.
Yeah.
Made a lot of mistakes on the way.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only way to learn, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. As far as telling people about a small business, I think it's for a lot of people. I don't think it's for a lot of people as well.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah. So you and I when did you open?
September of 2011.
Okay. So, and I went out as an independent agent in February of 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So our timeline, ours is pretty similar. And so just kind of when we got to know each other, you were about not quite a year in, and I was only
6
about,
months.
I was not even that far. And so I related to your story a lot, just from the struggle when you're starting out, when you're doing it on your own, all of that stuff. I related to what you had going on. So, what's one thing you wish you were better at with all the balls that you have to juggle? What's one thing you wish you were better at?
I don't know. Sales, probably.
Yeah.
That's the two podcasts I listen to. They're real big on sales.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. I'm just not a pushy person. I don't. I wish I could probably be better at sales.
Yeah. Your focus is more patient care. Like that's what you.
Yeah, taking care of the patient, providing what the patient came in for, what they want.
Right.
So some of those podcasts are really pushing like selling sunglasses to everybody and putting everything possible on a pair of glasses that you can give them. And that's not really the way we do things here. We're just more of, we'll explain quite a few of those things and offer those things, but we're just here for the patient, providing what they want.
Yeah. And I think that's something that as a business owner, you hear things that maybe other people are doing, other people in your industry, or just whatever it may be. And there is that pressure to do something that maybe is not what you're comfortable with, or maybe what you want to do. I'm sure you felt that pressure too, of, maybe being more pushy as far as sales and things like that. Ultimately, you've either got to be okay with not doing that part of it, or maybe bring someone in who that's more of their strength, and delegate that. So I think a lot of small business owners feel that pressure. Yeah. So talk about COVID a little bit. We're over a year out. Last year was pretty crazy, but just talk about how things developed and kind of what things looked like for your office here.
Oh man, yeah, that was an interesting time. It was hard. The hardest thing about COVID was just not knowing. It was just kind of the uncertainty of what was going to happen with, was the whole city and state and the whole country just going to get shut down?
Yeah.
So there was that fight going on in my head between, are they going to shut us down? Should I shut down myself? That sort of thing. Everybody has a different opinion on COVID. There's a big spectrum on everybody's opinion on was it the flu or was it the plague? And especially at the beginning, it was hard to know. You could listen to one international speaker, and it was on one side, you could listen to a different one, it was on the other.
Yep.
So it was just hard to know what to do. I was gonna plan on staying open as long as I could.
Yep.
It was just a random day when one of the ladies that works for me basically told me that we're the only place open still in Kearney. And at that point, there was only 3 cases in the county, I think, at that point. And so I'm just like, if we shut down now, how long are we gonna be shut down for? And then the time we plan on opening, are we gonna get shut down then?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm just like, what to do? I don't wanna be the only one open, and like, worst case scenario goes through your head that like, they start pinpointing that this is the place that people are coming into, and we're just passing it around basically. And so then every other place was shut down. I was like, oh, we're just gonna shut down.
Yeah.
And so we called all the patients scheduled for the next day and said, well, we're shut down. We don't know when we're gonna open back up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were closed for 5 weeks, I think it was.
Was that the hardest part, just not knowing how long you were going to be closed?
I think the worst part was, especially at the beginning of those 5 weeks, knowing that we were going to close down for 5 or 6 weeks, and then not knowing what was going to be at the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was probably the uncertainty was the worst, and then just finding something to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been out of school for 12 years now, and that was the first time I've taken probably more than 4 or 5 days off in a row.
Yeah.
And so just finding stuff to do. I mean, I still came up here and worked.
Sure.
Which is, I should have probably taken more time off, but we retooled our inventory, we retooled that sort of thing. We just figured out how to do things differently.
Probably stuff you would have never taken the time to do if.
Yeah, stuff that was in the back of your mind, like, hey, we need to figure out a different way to do this or that, but then the next patient's here and you just move on. And
Sure.
a week or 2 later, you're like, oh, I should start thinking about that.
Right.
And if I was gonna do it, it was gonna be on a weekend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because there was really nothing you could do. I mean, you maybe could have done sales online, but other than that, I mean, you have to have people in here to be able to run your business.
And we could have done online. I mean, I know some places were, I mean, the one thing that I contemplated doing was just calling patients that were contacts and just be like, hey, how are your contacts doing?
Yeah.
Are you running low? Do we need to order them? Things like that. But people were still calling with contact orders, and we were still ordering contacts. So, that's probably the worst thing about COVID now is that just like the supply chain is so much slower, and so people get frustrated just because our contacts take longer to come in, our glasses take longer to come in, and it's just kind of a nightmare right now.
Is it getting any better?
A
little bit.
Sometimes. It goes through spurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes through spurts.
Yeah. Well, I think that with small businesses, the reason that I asked that question is to focus on just how flexible you can. And I don't know, March, April, May, is that a busy time for you? As far as
March and April, or May, June are slower times.
Okay.
So like last year, we shut down, I think it was like March 23rd, something like that. It was like a Thursday, end of March. April's usually fairly busy, but then May and June are slow. And so we opened back up, like, it was May 2nd or May 4th, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of our slower time of year, but then we were just slammed at that time. So we were closed for 5 weeks, but I think we made up for most of it.
Yeah.
Especially in May and June, just because that's typically slower, but it was busier.
Yeah.
And it was probably May and June were probably close to our busier months of the year last year.
Yeah.
So
good.
And that was the worst thing about COVID too, is like, you just kind of wonder, are people gonna want to come back in? Like, even if we're open and seeing patients, like, are people gonna want to come in? Like, and that's that whole spectrum thing. You don't know. Some people didn't leave their house for 6 months, and other people didn't hardly stay in their house,
Mhm.
and so it was hard to know what was going to be here when
Yeah.
the time was up.
It's so, you can plan for a slow period in your business. You can plan for, even, you got insurance for things like, something bad happening as far as within the business. But that was the other thing about COVID is nobody had any answers. Nobody knew when you'd be able to open back up, and it varied state, county, all over.
Yep.
There's just so much uncertainty. So if you could go back 10 years ago
Okay.
and give yourself some advice, would there be anything that you would tell yourself to maybe do differently, or would you just kind of let things go as they have?
Oh man. I don't know. That's kind of like the whole Back to the Future thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? Like if
absolutely.
you change something, will it end up in the same spot?
Right?
I'd probably just leave it. I'd probably leave it. So I'd probably give myself the old dad talk.
Yeah.
And my dad did give me that talk a few times when I was running my business, especially in the tough times.
Yeah.
My mom and my dad were kind of the ones I leaned on.
Yep.
And I'd probably just give myself the same talk that he probably gave me 2 or 3 times in
Yeah.
there.
Put your head down and keep after it.
Yep. That it'll all work out.
Yeah. Easy to say now.
It's very easy to say now.
Yeah. So someone comes to you and they say, Mike, I want to start a small business, whether it's your kids or a friend, or someone says, what advice would you give me? What's one thing that you would tell them?
It's never as bad as it seems.
Yeah.
And it's never as good as it seems at the time.
Yep.
Either. I mean, it's kind of a roller coaster. I mean, there's some days where you're like, man, we finally done it.
Yeah.
And then you come in the next week and you're like, oh man, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And that'd be my biggest thing. It's never as good or as bad as it is at the time. So.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So how can we find out more about you? Give us address, phone number, Facebook, website.
We're 218 West 42nd Street in Kearney.
Okay.
By Eileen's Cookies, Mom and Dad's Barbecue.
Okay.
We got a website. It is, I think you can just search Google for Premier Eye Care.
Okay.
Our website, I can't even tell you what exactly it is.
Just Google it.
Yeah, phone number is 308-455-1283.
Okay. Got it. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, but I think you have a really great story, and it's been fun to kind of have someone to go alongside with me. Even though we're completely different industries, our journey is kind of followed the same path a little bit, and so it's been fun to kind of watch you grow your practice and do good things. So thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.